Hello, everybody. Why did it do that? I hate when it does that. Get out of here. There we go. Hey. Welcome back to Debate Hub. We are here. I've got Defango with me. I am Chesh, your master debater, Defango. It's so good to see you. I'm so happy you're able to make it to hang out with us here today. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me. I don't know what that was from. As I get older, I feel like things are starting to fail or whatever, but that's fine. I think that's what happens for most people.
That's just life happening, isn't it?
Yeah, life, the undecidable game. Or yeah, the game that it will never be complete and will always be undecidable.
Unpredictable, full of variables. You could never know because you never know who's watching. You never know who you're gonna meet, right?
Yeah, actually, you definitely never know who you're gonna meet and if they're actually a crazy person or not, or being for real.
This is true. This is absolutely true. So, you're
Mm-hmm.
here to talk to us today specifically about your life and death experiences. And because I've
Mm.
seen you talk about these a couple of times and just kind of mention and hint at them, and like it got me, and I'm like, okay, I need to hear about what exactly has gone on here. So please fill me in.
Okay, yeah. So I'm one of those strange people that's died a few times. And when I say died a few times, I mean like clinically dead, no heartbeat, no nothing, no brain activity. That's like actually been brought back to life. So, I mean, it's something for me that, like I don't try to focus on a whole lot because it seems ridiculous to me. But after a few times of it happening, I've been aware. So I guess you could say I'm like a revenant in some ways.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look that up, that means that you've died and you've come back to life somehow. And I mean, there's a lot of people that this has happened to. Near death experiences for a lot of people are the talk of the town. A lot of people want to know, is there life after death? And I don't really know, but I definitely did see some shit. And I mean, I've died a few times, I feel like, and I've seen some different shit every single time. And I think it's expanded with like how I've understood the world. Like, the first time that it
Oh,
happened
okay.
to me was when I was a little kid, actually.
Oh,
So, I
wow.
mean, the story's not that. I guess the story is a little bit crazy, but I was living in Nogales, Arizona, and I was pretty young, probably. I don't actually know how old I was. I know how old I was after I got out of the coma, but like not exactly sure, like what went down. And I really don't have any memories prior to this event. It's just basically like a tabula rasa, I guess, like wiped out to a blank slate. But either way, when I was a kid, my brother George, he dropped a gigantic rock onto my head. So he was up on like a hill where there was like a 6-foot wall, and then there was like a little bit of a gap, and then a hill that went up. And my brother and his friend Christian were up on top of that, and they were taking rocks and throwing it down. I was on the ground level. He's like way up here. And
Yeah.
basically, he picks up a huge ass fucking rock and he throws it over the edge. And like a dumbass, I'm like sitting there. I look up, I see the rock hit my head, and then,
Oh,
everything goes white and then black, right?
yeah.
And that's just like, that's basically my kind of like first memory. I don't really remember anything. I don't know too many people that remember being little kids anyway,
Yeah.
but it's like the first thing that I can remember. And
First
for
thing I
me, it was
remember is
very
my brother
strange.
hitting me in the head with a fucking rock. Nice.
Yeah,
Pleasant.
that's what I remember. It's pleasant. I don't think about it very often, but it does come back into my mind from time to time when people talk about different things. And obviously I grew up as like a Catholic, right? Well, at least that's what my folks told me. I got baptized and stuff. So I don't know, like I remember the situation very vividly because I don't remember any loss. I just remember strangeness. So it's like, my head, I get hit, my whole entire vision space goes like super bright white and then fades out into like a little into a blackness, so it's like I don't feel anything. And then I'm there for a little bit, and then I start getting this really weird feeling, and it's not like a feeling like you can feel it in your body or whatever. I just feel like all of a sudden my vision's coming back to me, but instead of me looking up, out the sky because got hit by the rock. I was actually watching myself. Like, and it
Oh,
took
the
me a
out
little
of
bit to
body.
figure that shit out. So it was like an out of body experience. At least that's what I've come to be aware of. So it's like I'm standing there, I see me on the ground, I see my head bleeding and stuff, and I'm just like in my face, I'm like, oh shit. Like that's what I was thinking at the entire time, and I was a little kid, but I remember very distinctly being like, oh shit, is that me? And then I look up and I see my brother and his friends like running down
Oh
the
shit.
mountain to
Don't
get
tell mom.
me.
Don't tell
And I'm
mom.
like, yeah, and I'm just kind of like watching this whole entire thing go down. And I'm like, is this fucking real? Like, what just happened? And then I just like kind of started thinking about it. And I was like, holy shit, am I dead? And out of nowhere, I hear a voice. And it's different than the voice that I hear inside of my head. Some people say that there's a still voice inside of your head or whatever. I just call it my conscience because it's me,
Yep.
just whispery me,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And I mean, some people don't think in a voice, but for whatever reason, I have an internal narrative. Like I have conversations with it, like, nope, don't do that, dumbass. And then I'm like, yeah, you're right. Don't do that, dumbass. So it's just like, I'm
Yeah.
hearing what my brain is thinking before it happens at some certain points. But it's like that internal voice, but it wasn't like my voice that time. It was like a much deeper, louder, boomier voice.
Mm.
And it was strange because like I didn't see anybody else besides who was already there. But this voice was just like, yep, you're dead. That
That.
wasn't supposed to happen.
See, my brain immediately goes to, oh my god, it was your voice as an adult from the future.
Yeah, like maybe it could have been my voice as an adult from the future. I don't really know, but it was like, "Yep, you're dead." And then I was like, "What?" Like,
Oh
"Huh?"
my god.
This entire thing was very, very strange because then, like out of nowhere, figure, black robe, coming up to me, very skeletal looking, like situation going on, and I'm just like, "Who the fuck are you? Who are you?" Right? And this thing's looking at me, and he was just like, well, I'm the guy that's supposed to take you to wherever you're supposed to go. He was like, I don't know what I look like right now. He's like, whatever you think about or whatever you think this is supposed to be, this is what it's gonna be. He was just like, but you know, you got a decision to make. And I was like, a decision to make. He was like, yeah, you could either decide to stay here or you could go back. And I was just like, what do you mean I could go back? And he was like, you could go back. He was like, but you're going to have to deal with all of the consequences of whatever happened to you. And I was just like, but if I don't go back, then where do I go? And he was like, well, you could stay here as long as you want. It's not like you're stuck here or anything. And I was just kind of like, I didn't really understand it when I was a kid, to be perfectly honest. But we had to me, it seemed like it was like an hour or two. Like we started walking around and visiting places in the town, but it was like a very weird feeling because everything was looked the same, but there was like a certain shininess to everything that I just can't explain. But it's like everything was sparkly and shiny, almost like it was a surreal experience. The only other time I've ever seen anything like this is when I had actually taken some DMT, actually, and it was just kind of like a weird overlay
The
over
sheen.
everything. It's like a sheen, but there was
It's
some
an
sort of
Instagram
pattern
filter.
to it. Yeah, it was just really weird, and it was like breathing or whatever. And it's just a strange thing, I didn't really think about it, didn't really get it, but I feel like I was there for a really, really long time and I explored for a while, but I eventually came back to myself and I just always remembered it to being the same way, like guys like, all right, well, just jump back in, just get back in there. And I just kind of remember, like laying back down into myself. But by the time I laid back down into myself, I was already like in an ambulance and they were taking
Right,
me
right.
back to the hospital. But throughout the entire time, I'm like watching myself from over myself, right? And I'm in the thing and I'm deciding, well, looks like they're working on me or something. And, they're hitting me with the paddles. They're checking the pulse. They're doing the whole 9 yards. My mom's sitting there. She's crying like crazy. She was wearing like a black dress already. Like, and she was supposed to be, she was out on like some kind of date with, my father. And then they had to like come home. My brother was supposed to be watching me. This whole shit goes
Oh.
down.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And all I remember is just, like they're getting us close to the hospital. I lay into myself. And then, like the doctors were already like trying to get me back. They weren't even in the middle of shocking me or whatever when I got back in. And all of a sudden, like, boop, boop. And they were already like, whoa, this guy's gone. Like they thought that I was gone because they knew that I was going to have brain swelling
Right.
from the
Right.
hit. Like I hadn't been breathing for a very, very long time. Like they were trying to keep me alive with, whatever they could, but it
Mhm.
didn't seem like it was working. And it was my mom says that it was probably like a full couple of minutes after they had stopped working on me that, it just kind of like came back. They couldn't really explain it. It just, my heart started beating again. And, like I had brain activity,
Right.
but
Right.
basically that was it. So I ended up being in a coma for a while after that. Apparently, I don't know exactly how long it is. They tell me that it was many months that they
Oh,
said I
wow.
was in it, but just, one day I finally woke up, right?
So it's
And
like a
it was
process
very,
to get back in there.
yeah, it was a process. The process, like, to me, it seemed like, like I was watching this thing the entire time and it was running in time, but it was a much longer time because by the time that I
Mhm.
got up, like I was already, I was in a coma, man. I just remember waking up. And that's like really my first memory is just waking up, looking around and being like, oh, oh. And then like tubes and shit are in my mouth. I have all kinds of things in my arms and shit. And then I, pull the main thing out and then a
Oof.
nurse comes in, opens the door and then sees me sitting up, holding the thing. And I'm just like, hello, you know? And she was just freaked out. She just
Scary.
looked like
Yeah.
she thought it was scary as fuck because she thought she had seen a ghost because they weren't expecting me to come back,
Right.
right? They were expecting me to just be, brain dead gone. And that's actually where I got this right here.
Oh, yeah.
So I have like a bald spot on the side of my head from when they had to like cut it so that they could relieve pressure. That's when they discovered my other issue. But basically, like they said that I had been out for a really long time. Like I didn't really remember anything, didn't remember who I was, nothing like that. Didn't really have any information at all, but they
Right.
were kind of weirded out because I was actually able to talk pretty clearly when I was a kid. Um, I had like ADHD. I was very hyperactive.
Right.
And after the event, I seemed to have slowed down a lot and got, I don't know, smarter in some kind of way. It was very strange to them. So I spent some time there. They took me home. Everything seemed to be fine. And, I kind of went on my way. But, according to the folks, they were like, yeah, you were actually dead, like we were all crying for you and stuff. And then, right before we got to the hospital, you started beating again. So they put you on the machines to, keep you alive or whatever. And they said that like over time, they could tell that, there was some type of activity going on. But, what was happening, they
Who
didn't
kn
really,
Yeah, who
no.
knows? Yeah, there's a
Yeah, at
lot of
that point,
that area of the medical field that is, like, inconsistent, I would probably is the term I would use.
yeah, and I mean it's the early '90s when this happened,
Mhm.
so like it's not like there. And kids are resilient, right? The
They
rock
bounce.
itself had to have been like 20 pounds
Yeah.
when it hit me. But the thing is that they discovered there was some strangeness about me because the bones in my head, like up here, did
Mhm.
not break, right? So like, I don't have a deformed skull or anything like that.
Impressive.
Somehow I was able to take the hit.
Yeah.
So like they tried to get through on this side and they made a notice or a note that it was very difficult to get through here. So like there's only really a cut. They were only really able to cut it. They couldn't actually like drill through it like they normally would with the bone saw. And it's just because I have a genetic disorder that makes my bones more dense than other people's. So
Oh.
like I weigh more than a normal person does. I'm not very tall, but I weigh a lot, but it's not because I'm fat, just because, like I have a lot more density than most people do out there. Like I've never broken a bone,
You can legitimately
actually.
claim that. But it's
Yeah,
my
I've
bones are
actually
just dense.
legitimate. Yeah, I just have super dense bones. So, like I have like a medium style bone structure, but my bone density is far greater than that. So it's a funny thing because it explains a lot of my life, but we didn't find this out for a very, very long time.
Right.
Although they tried to study it, like they did study me for at least a little bit of time. And then after I went back to school, they thought they were going to have to put me in some kind of like remedial class because
Right.
like I just wasn't like engaged in school anymore. But the fact is that I was taking all the state tests and passing them like it was nothing. I
Mhm.
could do all of my homework. I would do most of it while I was in class. So for a couple of years, things were just kind of normal. Like they put me into some like special class called curriculum enrichment in Arizona. I guess it was part of this. It was an extension of some program that was going on in California for kids called Stargate. But basically, it was like
Oh.
accelerated learning.
Oh, gotcha.
So I just was messing around with that and things seemed to be fine. And it wasn't until a few years later that I actually got like in myself into trouble again, which was the second time that they could technically say that I died. But this time I came back pretty quickly. Like I didn't have any issues
You're like,
really,
nah, I've
but it
done
was
this already.
yeah, I was like, I did this shit already. I'm gonna come back. And I was like riding around on a bicycle on a concrete basketball court, and somebody like threw a basketball in front of my tire, and I had done this 1,000 times before, where I just hit the ball with my tire and the ball goes flying. Right? I don't know if I wasn't going fast enough, or
Hmm.
maybe my understanding of physics was wrong, but I fucking hit that tire, and I literally did like a backflip and
Oh no.
smashed the back of my fucking head right into the goddamn concrete, going fast as fuck, and I was just immediately gone. And like
Oh
that was the
no.
crazy thing is that I'd already had like traumatic brain injury or whatever, although it didn't seem very traumatic to me. Um,
Traumatic for
and
everybody else.
it's traumatic for everybody else. And me, I just was like, well, I was here and I wasn't, and I'm back. So like during this particular time, like it was almost very, very surreal to me because, again, I'm looking at myself and I'm looking at the bike and I'm just like, shit, you know, like,
Ah,
oh shit.
here we go
Uh,
again.
I'm like, here we go again, man. Except for this time it was different, like it wasn't the same as before. Before it was almost like the world was all there, right?
Right.
It was almost like I could go anywhere. But this time it wasn't like that. It was like it was really only the area that I was in, and then everything else was just dark,
Now, were you
like in
living
black.
in the same place or were you living somewhere else at this point? Did you
Different
move?
place. So like
Okay, okay.
first place was in Nogales, second place was in Tucson.
Oh, okay.
And so they're not that far from each other, but like specifically though, like both times they ended up taking me to a medical center in Tucson where my doctor was. And then like at that point it was a very, very strange situation because like, I didn't really think about it. Like, hey, what's all the black shit? I don't remember the black shit. It's like, I don't remember this black shit. Right.
Right.
But then again, I am older. I had read a lot more. So I figured my understanding of like things in the world would have been different because of,
Right.
learning about other religions and shit. Because before I was like predominantly, all Catholic. That was really all I was focused on. They take us to church class and stuff like that. We go to school. And then this is probably when I'm like 8 or 9. So um I had started exploring other things, but like, that was just the weird shit. That skeleton looking motherfucker came back and he was just like,
Bro.
seriously?
Bro.
Like,
Why?
seriously, bro? Why? What happened? He was like, you can like get more, you get it. He's like, you could possibly get as many as of these as you want. He was like, but like, he was like, I'm unsure or unaware of what you thought was going to happen when you did that. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. So this time, I go back, pretty quickly. I didn't want to stay and hang around and chat with this weird motherfucker because I was freaked out at the point. So again, I come back, dude's holding the paddles this time,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I'm like,
Wait.
and he's just kind of like, they're just like, oh, well, okay, he's back. He's back. We got him back. We got him back, and they took me to the hospital. They checked me out, did x-rays or whatever. Um, they said I was probably going to be fine, but it was like I just knocked myself out, right? Like clean cold
Yeah.
out. So, they're checking pulse, had no pulse, checking this. But this time, more or less, it was probably the little shocky paddles that brought me back.
Mm.
Because, like that's twice right there, that's 2 times where, medically they could say that the dude was dead
Right.
and he came back. So, like, near death experiences are something that people talk about. And it wasn't, for me, the internet was around, but nobody really cared or talked about most of this stuff. So, like, and I mean,
Yeah.
I
I mean, the
looked,
most is a
I
lot of
looked.
people write books at that time period, like in that area.
Yeah, there was like a few books and stuff that I could like try to go off of and like, think about my stuff, but I hadn't actually discussed it with anybody, like, what I had seen or anything like that. For all intents and purposes, it was
Yeah.
just always just kind of a strange
Did you
situation for
ever
me.
did you ever talk to you said you were Catholic earlier on or in the first half of this. Did you ever talk to like your priest about it or any of like the clergy members?
Yeah, I did talk to my priest about it, and he was very, very interested in, discussing it because he was like, well, he was like, you were probably in purgatory. And I was
Oh,
just like,
okay. Yeah,
purgatory. And I was like, oh yeah, because you go there before,
that
when
would
you
follow.
die, you don't go straight to heaven or hell.
Yep.
You go to
Yep.
purgatory first,
And you would have
according
been
to
young
certain
enough too,
religions.
right? You would have been young enough
Yeah,
that that would have been an
I sh-
appropriate place.
yeah, it would have been an appropriate place for me because, like either way, it doesn't matter, even if you're a baby or whatever, according to their religion,
Right.
everybody is going to go there. And everybody stands in line and waits for their turn to get the decision whether they're going to heaven or hell.
Right.
And it's very similar to what you see in like the Egyptian traditions because, most people have to go through the Ma'at before the Hippo lady's going to tell them, yeah, let's weigh your heart. Your heart, not good, you're going to hell.
All right
Or,
here,
oh,
Grinch.
yeah, or no, it's lighter than a feather. You get to go
Mm.
wherever you want, So at that time I was like, very, very focused. And the reason I bring it up is because like over time I feel like as I learned about more about different religions and stuff, my experience changed.
Right.
And like that's a hard thing to explain because very many people don't have but maybe one near death experience. Nobody ever usually comes back from a death experience, right?
Right.
So like
Right.
there was always something that was strange for me in that particular respect because like like I don't know anybody that's had it happen to them twice, right? And for me, I had been around for quite some time already and I was young, so I just didn't really even think about it or worry it. And throughout the years, I started exploring more to like different like ideologies, atheism and stuff, and I started to realize that there was, like I had a lot of connections to what different people would say. Like sometimes people
Right.
would laugh and talk about seeing blackness or like, when you die, it's just gonna be black. And I'm just like, at certain points in time, I've actually seen that. Actually, like I
Right.
actually saw
Right.
that. That was the next time, which is the weirdest time. Actually, I got into a pretty bad car wreck.
Oof.
um, I was driving my car away from my friend's house. I had basically not a lot going on, but like my brakes failed in my car, and I was coming up to a T intersection. So I'm driving in my car, probably doing like 60 on this dirt road. I think the speed limit on it was 45. So, I was speeding a bit, whatever. And, I'm just driving down the dirt road and I see cars going by. So I hit my brakes and my brakes just fade to the floor and I'm not slowing down. So like I start
Oh
pumping them
no.
to try to get it going. And I had a shitty car back then. It was a Plymouth Breeze. It was like green. I mean, I got it for like $900 from a friend of mine and this thing was falling apart. So like, the car was not in the best of shape in the first place. So then I was like, well, ripping the e-brake on a dirt road isn't the greatest idea, but I might be able to like spin it because I used to practice that. And I used to practice that quite a bit on the road next to my house, where I'd be driving down, I'd pull the e-brake, and then pull a 180 and go the other way just for funsies.
Like a
And
glove?
exactly like that, like in Ace Ventura. And at this particular juncture, like I pull the e-brake and I'm not getting anything out of that either. So I was just like, oh, cool. I had no fucking brakes. So I'm just pumping the brakes, and then I start, going like this with the car.
Try
So
and
I
slow
can
it down.
start to slide a little bit,
Yeah.
to slow it down, because I figured, like I'm going to get in an accident no matter what.
Right.
Because there was cars going by, I was trying to stop, because if not, I'm going to smash into one of them. And finally, I'm getting so close to the freaking edge I'm getting so close to the intersection, going too fast, probably still going like 45, 50 miles an hour. And, so I go to make the hard turn, and I'm like, this is going to suck. And like, I don't know if one of the brakes just decided to kick in at that particular juncture, because the car finally kicked, and then I just went fly, and then the car's like, I rolled so many fucking times. It was a lot of times. And like, literally, I'm in the car, I still remember everything about it. And, everything was totally fine until, we came to a stop. And then, like, I just remember the airbag hitting me.
Right.
And then
Right in the chin.
I'm upside down. Right. No, the airbag hit me right here in the fucking forehead.
Oh, you got it right in the
'Cause
forehead.
I was already, I got
Apply
hit right in
directly to the forehead.
and I was upside down, and I had been upside down for God knows how long. Like, nobody stopped or anything like that. They just kept fucking going. And I remember when I left my friend's house, it was probably like 1 a.m. And when I got up, came to or whatever, it was like 3.
Oh, okay.
So I was out there for a while, just by myself. Nobody came. And, when I was like in the car, again, I had the experience where, after that, everything just kind of went black. And then I hear that voice again.
Right.
And I was just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, hey, what's going on here? And I figured I was just like passed out or something like that, because, okay, maybe I'm just passed out. But at this particular juncture, like, it started feeling a lot like the other times. And, I'm still having a conversation with, Mr. Skeleton Man. But
Right.
there's also a blue man that
Oh,
had,
no.
like, entered the fucking scene. And I don't know who
Player
the blue guy
3.
was. Yeah, I don't know who this blue dude is. I don't know who the blue dude was, but I'm guessing he was probably like supposed to be some kind of personification for Krishna. 'Cause during that time,
Oh,
I
okay.
was definitely reading a lot. I was like reading the Bhagavad Gita, and applying that. At least trying to apply that to my understanding or of the world at that point, because I was still pretty young. I think I was like 21 at that time. So like, I don't know, like, I was knocked the fuck out. I didn't really have anything, like, I knew I had been out for 2 hours, like, I knew that something had, there was definitely something wrong, because there was all kinds of fucking blood everywhere. I was bleeding out of my nose. I was probably
Right.
down. According to the hospital, I was definitely down a lot of blood at that particular juncture in time.
Yep.
But like, this time sucked because, like, I don't know, man. Like, Homeboy was the Skeleton Man was being a dick. And it was
Oh.
almost like, they were like really upset with me. And I could understand that at that particular juncture, because, I was having bad home life at that particular time. Just lost my girlfriend. And, like, things were just not going well at that
Crashed your
particular juncture.
car, got, like...
Crashed the car. Yeah.
You're at that age.
Alcoholism.
Yep.
The entire thing was just, messed up. And then
Mhm.
even more so is finally, when I got up, like, I was still stuck in the car, upside down or whatever. I, got myself out of the seat. I had to like kick my door open in order to get out. And then, like, obviously I'm stuck in the middle of the nowhere. I pretty much remembered everything. I
Mhm.
tried to find my cell phone, and it was like an old, brick phone or whatever.
Yeah.
It was gone. I couldn't find it. I mean, so all I really had was looking at the clock in my car, which was seemingly the only thing that worked. It told me that it was like you know, at least more. It told me that it had been a while. So I just basically was like in the middle of the darkness and I could see a little bit of a light into the distance. So I was just like, well, all right. So I just started walking. And I don't know how I had to have walked for like a half an hour or something before I got there. I knocked on the door. Some really old dude with the beard came out and he was like, "Can I help you?" And I was like,
You're
"Bro,
covered in
I,
blood.
I'm covered in fucking blood and shit." And I'm just like, "Bro, um,
Can I borrow your
I
phone?
just wrecked my car. Can I borrow your phone to call the police?" So I called the cops on myself. Not even
Right.
joking. I called the cops on myself. And so I waited there for like another hour probably before the cops actually showed up because they were like, "So you wrecked your car?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, my
My
mom told me
brakes
if you ever get in a
failed.
car wet accident, call 911.
Yeah.
And I was like, my brakes failed. Like, I explained to them what happened, and they were like, okay. So they came out, they did a breathalyzer on me. They didn't find, I didn't blow anything. So,
Yeah.
but I smelled like alcohol because there was alcohol in my
Which
backseat of my
spilled
car, like,
everywhere, yeah.
which spilled fucking everywhere. And it was
Yep.
funny. It was actually called vampire vodka. So it was all red. So
Oh, better.
a lot of the red with me was actually just the unopened bottle of vodka that like flew up, smacked me in the back of the head, and then just broke everywhere. And there was
Right.
glass everywhere too. So like the cops found the lid of the vodka bottle. They're like, "Well, you smell like alcohol," but they breathalyzed me and didn't have any, alcohol in my system.
Right.
And they just found the cap of it where it was still sealed and everything. It was just the whole fucking thing was exploded. And they're like, "So you're coming down here. We can see that you, I guess, tried to stop here. You flipped over like this." And they're just like, "You were stuck here." And it was just a strange experience because, like, the cops seemed to not care, right? Like, I thought I was going to jail, dog. And
Right. Right.
these two cops were in sheriff's uniforms. They had a sheriff's car, but they didn't act like any sheriff I had ever met. And I've
Hmm.
basically met all of the Pinal County sheriffs at that time because it happened in Casa Grande, Arizona. You'll notice that I'm going up Arizona for like every single death. It seems like I'm just moving up the map
Climbing.
in Arizona. And
Yeah.
it's just really weird, something that I noticed too. Like these two guys were just acting weird, okay? Like almost like devilish in a way. They were like, "Yeah,
Oh.
man, it's fine. We're gonna drop you off." They're like, "Tow Tuck's gonna pick your piece of shit car up. They're gonna give you $300 for it and scrap, and then we're just gonna go drop you off at your house or the hospital, which one you got to." So like they took me to the hospital. The hospital kind of like looked me over, whatever. They were just kind of like, "Hmm, well, you're fucking lucky to be alive." They're like, and then they showed me somebody else that had gotten into a car wreck that their car flipped less times than they were going slower.
Oh,
And that
jeez.
person was beaten, broken, broken arm, broken leg, like, hey, barely hanging on to life. And then I'm sitting there basically walking. I walked away, and it's a car accident I shouldn't have been able to walk away from.
Right.
But later, at this particular juncture of my life, we didn't find out about the
The
part of the reason
bones.
that the bones thing, the bones
The
thing wasn't really,
bones.
yeah,
Trust in
the
the
bones wasn't
bones.
the thing. Yeah, if
Oh,
I
it
didn't
was.
have these bones, I would have been busted,
Oh,
like
yeah.
busted all to hell, right? But they didn't really think about it. They didn't they didn't associate me to that just yet. Like I guess they hadn't looked at DNA, so I was just like, cool, whatever. I mean, so like that's number three, and that was the time that like all of a sudden I realized that I needed to make a change, right,
Right.
in my life, and like what I believed, everything, because it was just kind of weird. I felt like that one was a little bit different.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Mhm.
that one was a little bit different. It wasn't like the other times. And I was like, and, for a long time, I was like, fuck, man, am I in like some kind of like weird hell in a different universe that's just slightly the fucking same? Because,
Oh.
right after that time for me, the Mandela effect shit started happening for everybody.
Oh, and because the cops were being weird and you had known most of the cops and you didn't recognize these guys and the when you got to the hospital, they didn't, like, put one and one together and, like, okay, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like it was just weird. But like the one thing was that And when I was at the hospital, my friend's mom was a nurse, my friend Alex Cantrell, and she had always been like the nicest lady to me. And like I didn't have any alcohol or anything in my system,
Right.
but like she was treating me different. Like she fucking hated me or something. And it was just kind of weird, you know. And then like I called my friend, you know, Alex to like hang out with him, and you know, it was like apparently we had a bad relationship now, and I just never remember it going bad. So like there was just little differences and things. But, you know, like there's been another time since then that I've had to, I guess, experience, which is probably the worst time, really. And actually, it's the one that I have the most physical damage from. Like, I don't know if you could really tell
Oh, you
that,
got
but
that white there?
it's not just white. It's like there's,
Oh, hold up.
I have like this,
I can make this look a little better. Let's
there's a permanent, I have a permanent scarring around my neck from like when somebody basically choked me out. And you can still see it like right here where you can see their hand was. On one hand you can see that back here is where their other arm was.
Yep, yep.
So it's like most people would be like, oh, that's just a tan. No, that's not a tan. That's not a tan. That is not a fucking tan.
Right,
So
right.
for many years I didn't really have any issues. I guess I was more careful in life. Like I was still going to music festivals and experiencing things and having fun, but like I didn't have any dangerous situations for a long time until I was like living with some folks. And one of these guys had just gotten out of prison, and he was definitely like the prisoner types. His girlfriend lived with me, so we all lived together in the same house. She started dating this dude that just got out of prison. Yeah, great. So like, you know, these dudes are fucking crazy, right?
Right,
And I
right.
think one day we were playing fucking poker, and you know, like we're sitting around the poker table, like everybody's talking shit to everybody else, you know, like, and everybody's cracking jokes. So I didn't think anything of it, but apparently I pissed this dude off. So like I didn't even know anything was going on, or I didn't, you know, even realize what had been happening. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Homeboy just like, you know, hits me on the chin.
Sucker
And, you know,
punched?
at first, you know, he like sucker punches me. And I'm just kind of like, what the fuck? Did I just get hit in the face? Because, you know, like that shit usually doesn't affect me at all. I was just kind of like, you know, he hit me as hard as he
Surprise.
could, though.
Yeah.
You know, I was just surprised, like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, you know, I feel arm around my neck, and I was just like, oh shit. So you know, I'm like, hey man, what the fuck, you know? And he just puts me into a chokehold like right there, and he doesn't stop choking me until I stop breathing, and then I
What the
just slump
fuck?
on the ground, and you know, like right there, fucking dead. And that's what all the other people at the table were saying too. They were just like, dude, what the fuck are you doing, you know? They're like, you just fucking killed him. And like
Why? Oh my
my
god.
whole neck and everything over here is just red, and it never will never go away. And that's what I've noticed is like certain little injuries from any of these stuff, they don't heal like everything else. Like when I get hurt normally, most of the time everything just heals up. Like most people can't even tell that I have like a scar from molten sugar that burned me from years ago, because it's pretty much fully, you know, knitted itself back together. But for when it seems like whenever I go down for the count, if there's like any type of damage or whatever, that damage stays
It's
and
got
it
a little
doesn't
bit
go
of a
away.
holdover.
Yeah, so like, you know, around my neck, like this guy too, he
Mm.
was strange. Like I would have to say that he had demonic qualities about him. It almost
Ah.
seemed like he it almost seemed like there was somebody else hanging out inside there
Kind of
in his
flipped all of
brain.
a sudden from your
Yeah,
description.
he like flipped, turned into some like fucking demon, just dropped me right there. And according to the people of the house, I was definitely, you know, not breathing for at least 10 minutes
Oh
before
Jesus.
all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you know, I go back to life. You know, I start breathing again, and then I get up, stand up, and I'm like, bro, what the fuck, bro? You're fucking lucky this is me.
If
And
it's just
then, you
anybody
know, I was
else.
like, I was like, bro, I'm gonna call the fucking cops, right? I was like, you just tried to fucking kill me. I was like, no, you fucking killed me. And he was just like, they were freaked out. And like he was immediately freaked out. He was like, you know, gonna shoot me with his gun. And I'm just like, bro. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna move out. Right. I was like, I'm just gonna move out. Didn't want to bring the
Yeah.
cops to this dude's, space because he would have gone back to jail for the rest of his life. Right.
Right.
And I was just like, bro,
You know what?
don't ever talk to me
Fine.
again.
Yeah.
Don't ever say a word to me ever fucking again. And then like that was number 4, right? And I was like, at this particular juncture, I just kind of like was like, man. And my friend Andrew had been there and he had heard about some of these other stories, but he'd never seen it for like himself up
Right.
close. And
Right.
he was like, yeah, bro, like I was there. I was like, checking your fucking pulse. We were trying to give you CPR and shit. And he was just like, like, but we didn't know what to do because, Rainbow would have let us call the cops, would have let
Right.
us call the ambulance because then they would start asking questions, right? So,
Right. Right.
like they were all deciding how they were going to get rid of me, right? How they were going to get rid of me.
Yeah. What are
And
they gonna
then
do with the body?
yeah, what are we going to do with this body? And I was just like, oh, well, you don't have to worry about it. I'm back. And I was just like, so yeah, let's not do this again. I was like, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to move. And outside of that, like after that, like Andrew started talking about it to a couple of my other friends. And a lot of people in the community were just kind of like, yeah, there's something fucking weird about you. So, we went and got some tests done. And that's when we found out about the bone thing, which was, they were like, why can you, like, why do you have this? There must be some
The
sort
good
of
thing he didn't
explanation.
shoot you. The bone would have blocked the bullet.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't think
Left like
that
a
would have happened.
crack in it.
I mean, you'd only really get that lucky, if the bone hit you right in the sternum.
Yep.
Because if it hits you here,
Yeah. No
there's
bueno.
there's some bone, but I mean, these are the weakest ones. And I mean, even these being the weakest one, like I've only really ever like sprained stuff around it. I've never actually broken one, you know. And I've been hit by cars, like many cars, like probably 3 or 4 times. I got hit by a van. I get hit by like a 57 Chevy. I mean, so like I've had dudes hit me. I had a dude hit me with the sledgehammer. I had a dude hit me with the fucking like metal baseball bat multiple times, like in the head, in the arm and shit, to the point where, my friend got hit right here. He broke his arm right
Yeah.
here. I got hit right here just like this. And I was fine. I mean, I had a fucking bruise. That hurt.
You
But,
certainly have
you
gotten
know,
yourself through some very interesting situations. Like, what?
yeah. So like these have been some bad situations, but in every single situation, like there's been some sort of incidents where, like the third instance, there was really nobody else around. So like I don't
Right.
know if I was actually dead or not. I might have just been out,
Right.
maybe that's why it was different. And that's fine. But the third time I still remember, seeing everything, but this time, it was just the voice, right? Like nothing else. And I was just like, the dude's just like, dude, are you fucking for real?
Could you
You
stop?
really Could you stop? He was like, that didn't even need to happen. He was like, you shouldn't even be here. Okay.
Right.
He was like,
Right.
just leave. Just go back in there. Don't call cops. Just fucking leave. Just fucking leave.
Retro in the
Yeah. So
chat said, "Don't get me wrong,
yeah.
Defango seems like a nice enough guy, but I wouldn't want to be within 50 feet of him at any time in case I got caught in the collateral zone.
Yeah,
The
Murphy's Law
bone
shit.
zone."
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I've been in some situations, like I've helped people out, right? Where
Right,
it's
right,
been like, I had this what I've had situations where the bone thing helps me out because it's not like I'm stronger than anybody else. I just have the ability to take more weight, on basis. So I seem stronger, but really
right,
I'm not any stronger than anyone else. I just can, lift more shit because I can take more weight. That's
right.
basically it.
That makes sense.
And I've like messed around with it, but there's actually a genetic gene where they were investigating a family that had this gene where they had a basically unbreakable bones to the point where
Right.
like none of the people in the family had ever gotten damaged or hurt anyway. And apparently I have a similar issue in my genetic makeup that makes it so that my bones are way stronger, but my teeth are weaker than most.
Yeah,
So
your
like
your teeth are made up of hair, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but at the same time, it's like I have to pay more attention to the teeth than most people, or
Right.
I'll get cavities and stuff. Like I have like a bone structure on the top of my mouth right here that's
Right.
synonymous with that. So for me, it's been like helpful, right? And maybe
Right.
it's helped me get through a lot of these situations. But like I've always been like, I guess, I was born a religious type. I could say that I'm still spiritual, I guess, but not really that religious because,
Right.
now I don't know, maybe I'm a psychopath, but I figured I've started learning about all of these gods, and my worldview is that everything exists because the universe is infinite, so there's got to be somewhere out there, maybe not here in this little tiny ass end where we're at, but there's probably got to be something, like blue dudes, there's purple dudes, there's bug people, probably, as long as they might not be here, but
Now, are
I've
you
always
thinking
tried
like
to rationalize
in a
things.
parallel way or in like a completely different scenario kind of way, or some are maybe more parallel than others?
I think that it's parallel, but at the same time, like everything exists in this one universe. So like you don't actually have to go to a parallel universe to find, certain things, right? Like, if there's some kind of God or whatever, they're probably somewhere and nowhere at the same time, right? But then there's other entities that have been brought up. So like in the Marvel like theory, they have all of the gods living in one place.
Right.
If you've ever watched any of the Marvel movies, so like I think if it that in that way, that like yes, earth is probably a spot that like many different like alien races of beings that consider themselves gods, but their idea of a god is basically the word that they use in their language to say person, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, yeah.
like I think that like that's overall how I've tried to like understand like how all this stuff works. But I've looked into many different religions on the world, and I found a lot of like really interesting connections and connotations to how they think. And then I also looked into mathematics, and I was like, well, maybe there's a mathematical way to say that that's bullshit.
Gods and
And
math.
still to yeah, unfortunately math is undecidable and incomplete. So we can't do that. Like eventually, maybe we will, but I think Godel with his little card system or whatever put it the best. There's always going to be true statements that can never be proved, right?
Right.
Because nobody's been able to complete math enough to the highest level enough to actually make that happen. And I
I mean,
think
you're
that's probably
also
why, like,
gonna run into the you can't know what you don't know, right? Like you can't you how you can never have complete knowledge because you'll never know for sure that it's complete.
exactly. That's exactly there. So, for me, it's just really weird because like that seems to be a thing that everybody says, "Oh, well, you only get one," but I could
And you're
tell at
like,
least in three
no.
different instances. I was like, "Nah, I don't know if it's like that. Maybe it's like that for me." But every time that I've had this experience, and it's many times that I've had the experience. It's not like just like a little kid dies and says that, oh, I went to heaven and I saw the angels and everything. I did not see that. Okay.
Mhm.
You know, I saw where I was basically every single time. And then I saw a viewing of my own death, like, how that shit happened. And I had to decide. And, I seem to
Right.
have a lot of time to decide. It wasn't like, it wasn't like it just happened so fast, like the very first time, I don't really talk about it with a lot of people, but I feel like I was there for a very, very long time, like just exploring and flying around. And then homeboy's like chasing me around. He's like, no, motherfucker, you need to go back. What are you doing? Like, get back here. And to me, it was just like this,
Children need
whoever that
leashes.
dude was. Yeah, whoever that fool was, like whoever that entity, that being, that, thought process, at the end of the day, I still don't know. I've always just associated it to death because I read a really great story one time, and honestly, it seemed like the most fun interpretation of that whole entire thing because it talks about, it's a story by an author called Terry Pratchett.
I was
He's
gonna say
British.
it's Pratchett. Yes, Terry Pratchett.
Pratchett, yeah,
Mort
that guy.
and Death. If you have ever watched the BBC special, the Hogfather, if I'm remembering correctly, that particular adaptation, the person who plays Death is Christopher Lee.
Yes, Yes,
It's
yes,
a
yes.
lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, not only do I, because they did a BBC special, I think it's 4 parts. They did The Color of Magic, and then they also did The Hogfather. If you happen to catch it, it was on Netflix for a little while. I don't know if it's still there, but if you can get a copy and you can watch it, anybody out there, watch it. Terry Pratchett is amazing. Read Terry Pratchett books. They are fantastic. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, they're the greatest actually. See, and I hadn't read any of his books yet at before the first death. Like
Right.
I didn't meet my friend Alex until later on when we moved to Casa Grande. But like I just remember, he was asking me about my life and I told him the story about this and I was like, yeah, it was just really fucking weird. There was this dude, he was like a skeleton wearing a black robe and
Yep.
he was like losing his shit. Like
Whips this book out. This guy?
this dude? And I was just like, yeah, kind of look like that. And he was like, that's the Grim Reaper. And I'm just like, who the fuck is that? Because at this point, I had books and stuff like that, but most of it was either Catholic based or, my parents didn't let us read,
Yeah, the
anything out of it. So it
classic
was like
Grim Reaper doesn't really exist in Roman Catholicism too much.
no, no, it doesn't. So, like this is a figure that I had never seen before. I didn't have any theological connection to it in any way.
Right.
So like I read this book and I was just kind of like, oh fuck, man. I was like, what the fuck, man? Did I meet the fucking this guy? And I was like, but he didn't ever say what his name was, so could have maybe did, but I always kept that in the back of my head. And then later on, I started like reading into other people's like stories about their near death experiences, which it's weird because like how you experiencing that shit if you're not dead, right? And even more so, it's like it wasn't until very later, I think it was probably like 2013, I was at a music festival with my friend Endeavor. He was wearing his Cookie Monster outfit. He goes to like basically all the music festivals. He works at them,
Oh, okay.
but he's a very recognizable fool because he literally is always wearing this Cookie Monster outfit. You can't miss him. Like you see him and everybody knows it's exactly him because he's always wearing the same thing.
Ah,
Right. So like I remember this guy was talking about it and he was like, yeah, would you guys like to experience this? And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do this shit. Right. Like I'll give it a shot. This seems to be widely different, So we had a whole ceremony, where we went through the intention. My intention was like, hey, I want to quit smoking. That was what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to quit drinking and smoking so much. That was my goal for the session or whatever.
right.
And I remember, doing that shit, it's a very specific way of doing it. You have to either drink it with the MBOI inhibitor or you can smoke it just directly. It's just going to be a much more intense like situation. I've done it both ways. But we go through the ceremony, after a while you go into it. And that was the first time that I've ever had an experience that was similar to death. So that's why when I tell people if you ever do DMT, it's like dying because that's the closest that I can associate it to something in my experience because I remember everything going super white, fading out to black, and then a bunch of really crazy colors and things, almost like you're fading into the fabric of reality in some kind of way. It's almost like you go fall back into the matrix, I guess is what you could call it. Yes,
Yeah.
the matrix of life.
There's
Right.
a question from the chat that's we can get to that's kind of similar to what you're starting to talk about now. So I think it's a good time. It's like after this kind of experience, do you find that you straddle the line between here and there, or are you like do you find that you're pretty solid?
I find that I'm pretty solid. Like I'm pretty set in understanding that, like there's a difference between the places. It's just that I've always been able to pick up on shit like ghosts, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, before the event, I don't remember ghosts, but I definitely remember, being a kid at Anheuser-Busch in Casa Grande, Arizona, and like sitting in my dad's office overnight and like going up and going to the bathroom and then seeing a fucking ghostly white Indian
Uh,
running at me.
how do you
And then
feel
I was like,
about like ghost hunters then, and like on YouTube or on TV?
For a while, I was like into watching what they were utilizing to figure that shit out, and I would like try to understand, like their methodology. Like, there's a lot of folks in there that feel shit out, right?
Right.
They're like, oh, it's really cold right here. I can sense the presence of the spirit. That sort of shit, right?
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I actually could do that shit too, but I don't really talk about it.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
there are times where I've noticed strange things, where I've seen like a ghost or, a fucking blue dude or whatever. So, like, in a sense, like, do I see dead people? No, but I feel like there's definitely at times, like, I stay the fuck away from graveyards because them motherfuckers be following me around and shit. Like spirits be following you around. And I can always usually tell when like there's something around, whether it's
Get a vibe.
whatever it is, like it's not even like getting a vibe anymore. It's like direct, like, yo, there's something fucking right there. And
Right,
like
right.
sometimes people talk about seeing shadowy figures or whatever,
Yep, yep, yep.
like on drugs and stuff. Um, I feel like sometimes I see that, just be walking around in real life. I'll see some kind of like shadowy thing around, like aura around something because I actually do. I actually had to train myself not to see it. So, like, for the most part in regular life now, I don't see it. But when I was a kid after my accident, I used to see stars all the time. Like, that's as best I can describe it. But in my vision, I would see little wispy things swirling around and like all the time, all day long. And
Wow.
eventually, like, I would basically have to like almost blur my vision in a little bit and then force myself not to see it anymore. But like I could see it around people. Like around people, I would see a lot more of the little things around their bodies and shit. And I didn't know what it was for a long time until I started exploring into like new age shit. And so they would call it auras, right? So like
Right.
they'd have different people with like aura chromatic photography and stuff like that.
Mhm, mhm.
But I didn't need to, I would say stand by the camera and I said this person's like an orange, purple, green. And then they would take the picture of them and then the colors that I would be saying would be the same on their
Match.
little like match their pictures. And they'd be like, well, that's a little weird.
That's
That's a
cool.
little weird. Never seen anything like that where people could see that stuff. But I feel like I've gotten a lot more like in tune with reality in some kind of way, like I don't know, super weird. Not a lot of people ever experience this type of stuff, but the afterlife is something that like I've never really seemingly have made it to. The afterlife for me seems to just be like a space, a
Right.
space within a space, like not something that is to be feared, or at least for me it don't seem to be feared. Like I seem to remember everything, and
Uh,
there's like a residual self-image type quality to like the way that I look from that event. So it's like as the at the time that the event happened is what I look like in that space. And
uh,
what that space is, I don't know.
right. Christina is asking something along the lines, or well, they're making a statement, but I'm curious about your thoughts on it. They said, "I feel like ghosts are more like a photographic type of imprint on an environment and not actually a spirit." Do you think that the spirit, the what you're seeing, is like an actual ghost or a remnant of someone, or do you think it's more of like an imprint of the time period, or like a culmination of whatever happened in that area at the time?
I think it's more of a combination of whatever happened in the area at the time
Mhm.
because anytime that I've like seen any type of apparition or like spirit or something like that, it seems to have a more memory type quality to it than it
Mhm.
does a like it's happening right now. It's almost like I feel like
After
sometimes I'm
image.
tapping into yeah, like into an after image where there's just something that's there, like there's no usually whenever I've seen anything like that, there's never any type of rhyme or reason to like what they're doing. It's not like they're trying to interact with me directly. It's like they're just playing out a scene.
Right.
That's what it was like. And that's how
Um,
it's been like for me.
Retrocon is asking, do you think these experiences are legitimate, or do you think they could be in any way a consequence to how your brain responds to external stimuli?
I thought for a long time that it could be a consequence on how my brain responds to external stimuli, but there are people out there that have like synesthesia and other types of issues that are very similar to some of the things that I see. So it'd be like saying that you could see pheromones or something. So to me, I feel like there's a legitimacy to it because, like humanity does communicate on various different levels outside of flapping their meat at each other, right? Like we can write, we can flap our meat, or we could
I like that
what?
description of it. Flapping
Well,
meat
that's
at
what
each
we
other.
are.
I mean, you're not
That's what we
wrong.
are, man.
You're not
We're
wrong.
talking meat.
That's why I
That's what
like
we
it.
are.
Yep.
Like the other people, the aliens, they look at us, with their silicon based mind forms, they're not talking meat, they're something else, right? So,
Right,
like, that's what we are.
my windowsill caulking is talking to me.
Yeah, if your windowsill, if they're made out of like glass or some kind of silicon based life form, they don't have meat, right? In the way that we understand it. So they're going to be something completely different, I guess, something completely different.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced that if we run into aliens at any point in time that we're even going to recognize them as another intelligent life form because they could be so vastly different.
Exactly. They could be vastly different, but essentially, the only way to truly understand intelligent life would be some kind of like mathematical system that utilizes the base pairs of um like atoms and things to like explain, because that's one thing that eventually is going to break down. It doesn't matter about the language barrier as long as
Right.
everybody understand 1 = 1. You can teach
Yeah,
everybody
there's a really
everything
fascinating
else.
thing about that when it comes to whether or not people can understand other people when they're in a different country. And the thing is what it seems to be, this is just from my reading, so don't take my word on it, but it seems to me that people are perfectly capable of communicating without language at all, and it's just a matter of how specific you can be and a matter of how patient everybody is in the situation. So you can easily communicate with individuals and not just, oh, it's a lunchbox.
Yeah, she
Oh,
wanted to get up in here.
oh,
She's probably
hi.
hungry. Hi,
Oh,
Lunchy.
I
Hi,
kicked
sweet
Puck out.
puppy.
Puck is laying in the hallway right now.
Yeah,
Um,
Lunchy doesn't get kicked out.
oh,
It's snowing outside, and there's really no other place for her to go in my little tiny place over here.
oh, buddy. So somebody, CV, which I believe is from your chat, I think I've seen them around, said, quote, "We create our own realities moment by moment through our emotionalized thought, especially when spoken. Have you created your life after death by how you perceive it?"
Mm. Well, I mean, I feel like at one point in my life when, I got into the card wreck or whatever, I definitely felt like, I don't know, I shifted into something different or a different type of universe. For a long time, I was like, fuck, am I in hell? Like at one point I was thinking that
The worst
because, like
timeline.
the just everything was going wrong and it didn't matter how good I was doing things. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Like I just was failing hard, like
Mm,
super failing hard. And I don't even remember, like what changed about it. It was just like I just remember one night being super emotionally like drained and upset, saying like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, I was like, I feel like I'm not in the same place that I was before. I
mm,
felt like I was just in a completely different universe or something. And I've read stuff online about people that think that they can cross between different like universes and stuff, where you can wake up in one plate in one universe and then somehow move yourself to another parallel universe, which is absolutely crazy. But like for the longest time, I think it was just for me emotionally. Like I do pick up on other people's emotions. There's a lot of nonverbal communication that
there
happens
is. Yeah.
out there. It's like with my puppy right here. She doesn't talk or anything like that, but I feel like I pretty much know what she's thinking, all the time based on like how she interacts with the world and
Yeah.
whatnot. And even more so, like if you go to if you start over as a baby after you go to hell, no, I've always came back as this person, or me, whoever me is. So like I've tried to look into all the different theories, like, ooh, walk-in theory, could you be a different type of being inside? But for me it's just never been there. I just feel like, maybe I'm just like undead in a in a some kind of way or whatever.
I'd be curious to like, because it doesn't seem to me that your experience is portraying a heaven or a hell. It's an experience out like independent of either of those things. Um,
Yes, in all aspects.
we got that question. So Feline had asked, so an important question is Defango is now completely fine, or is there still like, have you gotten to a place in your life where you're not finding these events happening as often, like as dangerous, I think. You described some really dangerous, like living situations even. I think they're just asking if
Yeah,
you're okay.
now I'm totally fine. Like I live by myself. I don't live with other people by choice, right? Like I like having
Mm,
my own space, so I feel safer. But I'm definitely much more of a loner nowadays. Like I don't like. I did enjoy being surrounded by lots of people at music festivals, but like ultimately that's not my. Not um ultimately I like that's not who I was. Like I was going to all these
right.
festivals and things trying to like come out of my shell more, understand the thoughts and feelings of other people. So I felt like I was like a double agent at times when I was there, because like I didn't feel open to being able to talk about what my personal viewpoints on the world were. And then
Right.
even more so, a lot of these people were weird and crazy. Like a lot of them would tell me that I looked blue, and I was like, what do you mean? They're like, they would show me a picture of fucking like Krishna, and they'd be like, you look like him. You look blue to us. And I'd just be like, what do you mean? I'm not. I'm brown. They're like, nah, man, you're blue. You're a blue dude. It was just super weird. So, like, in
It
these
would be a
places, though,
bizarre
they had
interaction.
Well, in these places, like they have like different types of meditation circles and stuff. And
Mm.
I remember taking part in one of their ceremonies that seemed to have been connected to some sort of like Hindu ritual that was actually being done by like people who flew all the way from India to like California to like have this ritual done. And I remember that was a weird day because I'm just like in the back, like way far away from everybody. And like the guy that's running the thing, he all of a sudden like walks up to me, like directly towards me, and he's like, "You come with me." And then he like sits me down in front of this gigantic crystal singing bowl that's like the biggest one that I'd ever seen. And he had me sit in front of this thing, and then starts
Oh
running
yeah,
it
yeah.
off. And I'm sitting there, like trying to do the meditation or whatever, but my eyes are open because the thing's so goddamn loud. And then there was this blue dude standing in front of me. It was it was the weirdest thing. It was a guy, but he was blue. He looked like he was dressed up like one of those Hindu gods or whatever, and he was talking to me. Although I didn't really understand what he was saying because I don't know that language, but he was
Right.
talking to me. And it was super weird. It was probably like one of the weirder experiences that I had. But like the explanation that I got from these guys he was like, yeah, it's all about, your personal vibration. You can't see it unless,
Mm,
you're at a certain point
right.
personally. And their whole thing was that, you need to increase your internal vibration. It's all about, becoming in tune with all the different elements that create you and their atomic structures, and basically getting them to spin and vibrate faster to create more vibrance and vitality in your
Like
life.
hitting a note that shatters a glass.
Exactly, like hitting a
Mm,
note that shatters a glass or hitting a note that resonates
mm,
you, because essentially, in a lot of ways, your DNA is like a receptor or an antenna of light and sound, right? Like mostly light and sound waves can affect the way that your DNA is actually, being utilized. That's why like cosmic rays and things like that are very, very bad for you, because like they
mm.
can obliterate your
You're talking about
DNA if you.
radiation. Yeah, radiation.
Mhm.
Yep.
All radiation, but like
Yeah.
as a human, as you sit right now, like you could survive. You could be a naked person running around. You might die from like
Exposure.
over the years
Yeah.
from exposure or whatever. But like you'd die pretty instantly if you were in space. Even if you were in a spacesuit and you had like an unlimited amount of oxygen, if you were in space, you would die a hell of a lot faster from all of like the neutrinos and shit blasting into your
The
DNA and just
protection of the
destroying it.
atmosphere, yeah. There's
Hmm.
something when it comes to a resonance that I think people probably kind of dismiss a little bit. You can get thrown off your like internal rhythm really easily, and all it takes is for me to not finish a and it just like throws you off. The English language is a really good example as well. There's a specific order that English goes in, and like when it comes to, I think it's adjectives. Adjectives go in an order, and if they're out of order, you sound like a crazy person. And so, like, there's no such thing as a great green dragon. It's a green great dragon, or sorry, a green. There's a great green dragon, but not a green great dragon, unless great dragon is its title, because there's an order, right? And so if I play a piano and I play just a C scale and I don't hit that do re mi fa sol la ti do, if I don't hit do at the end, it's gonna throw you right off. It'll mess you up for the whole day if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, that would screw me up pretty clearly. And to the guy in the chat, he was like, "Did he see? Was he really blue, or did he see blue?" No, no, he was blue. Like it was just like a blue dude, and it wasn't a full dude. It was like a visage, an ethereal blue visage, like 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 a Force ghost out of Star Wars, but that was in color, right? Like the Force ghosts in Star Wars were all blue. This dude was blue, but like all of his jewelry and shit was the correct color. It just wasn't his whole entire body. It was like,
Was he solid or did he
you know,
have that ghosty quality?
he seemed solidish. More, he didn't. He seemed more solid than ghosty.
Mm,
Like it wasn't. It seemed like I wouldn't have been able to walk through this thing. But that was a crazy thing to think about. You know, like there
right.
was one time where some random dude named Jesus showed up in our lives, and I was at Coachella. It was like the first Coachella I ever went to. It was like Sunday. We were having, or it was like Sunday morning. We were all by this like lighthouse. We had just eaten breakfast. Everybody like just getting up for the day. Nobody's on drugs yet. Well, maybe a couple of people were, not me, but we all walked up to the lighthouse at Coachella. If you've ever been to Coachella, you know what I'm talking about. It's on top of a hill, like away from everything. So like when you get to the top of the hill, you can see everything. So you can see when people are coming up, no matter what. So we were up there playing frisbee, like ultimate frisbee with our friends for a little bit. And like my buddy Sean throws the frisbee out and it kind of like gets an errant catch. And out of nowhere, this dude like catches it. And he was like a Middle Eastern type guy he was looking super Jesus-y. That's just basically if somebody were to have looked like Jesus, this guy, because he had like, you know, brown skin, but he had a
The
beard
dark
and then he had
beard
the
and the
long
hair. Yeah.
hair. Yeah, you know, like I would just be like, I was like, the fuck? You know, to me it was just strange actually, because I was already, you know, having spiritual conversations with some of the people that were there at the music festival with me. And then, you know, like random people always will just come up to me and start trying to have like super deep conversations, and I don't understand why. But
Mm.
like this had kept happening, and then out of nowhere, like this dude just like shows up out of nowhere. We're all kind of like, did anybody see this guy fucking walk up? And nobody
Mm.
did, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
So he starts talking to me directly, and he was like, "Yeah, man, this thing, you having a great time. This shit's all for you. I hope you really enjoyed everything that's going on." He was like, "You know, this has been one of your best manifestations yet." And at the entire time, I'm kind of like, "Who the fuck are you?" And he's just like, "Oh, you know who I am."
Oh,
I was like,
you
he's
know
like,
who
"Who do
I
I?
am. Look at
Who do I
me.
look like? Who do I look like? You know, like almost like Jesus and
You got
like."
sassed by Jesus. That's what you're telling me
I
right
was
now.
getting sassed by Jesus basically, and then he
Okay.
says, "Yeah, I'm Jesus," and we were just like, me and all my friends are all like,
I do
"You're
like to
fucking
imagine
hilarious."
I do like to imagine that Jesus would be sassy, personally. I believe in sassy Jesus.
Yeah, like he was a lot like the Family Guy Jesus, I would have to say,
Oh no.
a lot like that, like that. But he was like having fun. He was like, "Yeah, whatever." And my friends are like, "So you're Jesus?" And I was like, "That's what he said. That's who he says he is, bros." So, we're all like, this guy's probably just on drugs, we'll just entertain him. And then,
Right.
he'll just walk off and be on his way eventually when he gets bored with us. And, he starts like saying some pretty like deep stuff to some of my other friends, like telling them about stuff that they haven't told basically anybody about. Like he was just
Mhm.
like rattling shit off like about all of them. And they're all like, I've never
And
told anybody about that. And then,
mm,
before all I knew it, the guy was just like, yo, dude, like you still got a long ways to go. There's going to be a lot for you to have to go through. You're going to have to do some bad shit in between it. He's like, but, eventually you'll figure it all out. And before we knew it, he was just like telling us bye. And I mean, it was a long conversation, but I won't get into it with about like what he
sure.
was really getting deep into, because a
Yeah.
lot of people are just going to be like, what the fuck, that's crazy, you're
Maybe for
crazy.
another time.
So I just it was weird. So like we all like we're sitting there, and then we all like turn around and we're like talking to each other. We're like, all right, bye, Jesus. And then Jesus starts walking down the hill, and as soon as his like head disappears, we can't see him anymore. We were like, guys, that was just like a weird thing. Are we like getting punked by like the people at Coachella or something? Do they
Are
like
we
have people
okay?
walking around the festival listening to conversations, and then they like bring out Jesus to fuck with people? Is that what's happening here? It was we were having a crisis, but it was only about 30 seconds that we were all talking to each other, and then we all looked back over in the direction where Jesus went to like see where he went, because there's no way in that short period of time that he could have gotten off the hill, even if he was running faster than like Usain Bolt.
He pull a
If it was
Batman.
Usain Bolt, he would have been able to disappear, but he disappeared. He was fucking gone. And it was just weird, man. It was a strange situation. There was another time when I was reading some shit on the internet about Saint Germain. I don't know if you've ever read into any of that stuff, but it was like some new age crap.
Mm.
And it was this poem that says invocation to Saint Germain. They're like, you say this shit, this dude's gonna show up in your life. So, I was like, all right,
Tried it.
I think you're bullshitting. I'm gonna try this shit. And I started walking. I did the thing, started walking to work, because it said that it would take like 15, 20 minutes before, he showed up. And like, I started walking to work. And as I'm walking to work, there's like this dude, like older looking gentleman with glasses on, long blonde hair. And he's just like trucking down the fucking street. And then he stops and he looks at me and he was like, hey, bro, how's it going? I'm a 900-year-old vampire. And
What
I just
the
was like,
fuck?
what?
Send me the
Like,
poem.
huh?
I'm gonna summon
What?
this man.
And basically, like, this fool was like, yeah, I'm Saint Germain. I'm a 900-year-old vampire. You summoned me? And I was just like, the fuck, dude? Are you serious right now? So, like, I had a conversation with this guy. And he was basically like, yeah, actually, I kind of need your help. He was like, my Volkswagen Bug broke down, and I'm on my way back to Sedona so that I could go do some things. He was like, can you help me
900
out?
years old vampire rides around in a fucking bug.
Yeah, VW
I
Bug.
love
So,
it.
I went to,
Of course he's in a
help him out.
VW.
He was in a VW Bug. He couldn't get it started. Basically, we hit it with the sledgehammer and it started right up. Basically,
Oh, there you
it was like the thing got stuck or something like that. You just got to smack it with a hammer. See, I went to Mexico City with the family at one point,
go. Mhm.
and I learned that in Mexico, basically, there's bugs, and then there's everything else.
Right.
But the majority of cars in Mexico are all Volkswagens for whatever reason.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but you have to be very good at fixing them in order to live there, because like that's what you can get parts for most readily available. So like
Makes sense.
it was weird because this guy said he was a vampire. Like, I didn't talk to him. He talked to me. He just offered that information up that he was a 900-year-old vampire.
Mhm.
I was kind of wondering why I was walking around in the sun, but I guess if you're some sort of ascended master or whatever, you got hacks or whatever. And I
Hey,
mean,
who even knows if what we know
vampires,
about vampires is even true anyway?
exactly, like vampires. So whatever. But
I've
I
got
remember this
sorry, go
because
ahead.
we have all these I kept on having these experiences, and it was after that one, the
Yeah,
Saint Germain, that even more not like dangerous shit happened, just strange fucking shit. Strange.
I don't doubt it. It sounds like you've been through a lot and experienced a lot of different things that are, things that just most people don't encounter generally. Like, I don't think most people get choked out randomly at poker at their friend's house. Um,
Yep.
RetroCon asked, beyond your lived experiences, do you think there would be any empirical way to test the events and perception you have been subjected to?
Yeah, I think it's like gonna be in like that movie like Flatliners or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
where they kill
With Kevin
themselves and then
Bacon?
they go through. Yeah, with Kevin Bacon.
Yep.
I feel like that would be the only way to like empirically test anything of that nature, would to be to have a large group of people all experience that same type of event
Is
and
there any
then
kind
be
of
brought back.
consistency that you find around specific areas? So if you go to, like, the same place over and over again, do you find you have a similar or the same experience on any kind of consistent basis?
Hmm. No, I don't think that I go have ever been to the same place and had the same experience. I
Mhm.
think that ever since I got out of Arizona, I haven't really had any experience like that.
Arizona's just a hellmouth, confirmed.
Yeah, it is. I feel like it is the Mount the Hell. But then again, there's a lot of Native American
Right.
folks in Arizona, and even a lot of their teachings, from what I've been able to gather from like reading stuff, seem to like have a very familiar or similar type aspect to it. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like their idea of the afterlife is more of what I'm seeing than, like what apparently my idea of the afterlife is supposed to be, because this area that I'm going to is definitely not like a heaven or hell, but it's almost like the same exact plane, right? It's like I'm on Earth,
Right.
I'm here. It's just
But
I'm not able to.
it's
I'm
different.
like able to play shit back and forth. It's like the fourth dimension doesn't seem to matter at that point.
Have
If that
you,
makes sense.
out of curiosity, read much Kurt Vonnegut?
I've read a couple of his books, but they were really long.
They're
I
like,
don't know.
are you thinking of Voltaire? They're not that big.
I'm probably thinking about somebody else.
I would recommend maybe checking out the book Slaughterhouse-Five if you've never read it. It's not a terribly long read. I think I'm sure some
Is
of his
it
stuff is longer.
nonfiction?
No, not Slaughterhouse-Five. Slaughterhouse-Five is fiction.
Oh yeah, that's fiction. Yeah, it's fiction. It's
Yeah.
probably why I haven't read it.
I would recommend checking it.
Sirens of the Titan, Mother Night, Cat's Cradle, Breakfast of Champions,
Cat's
Slaughterhouse
Cradle is
Five.
interesting. I definitely recommend checking out Slaughterhouse-Five. Yeah, I think you would find it a very interesting read just from what you're describing to me. But we should probably look to start wrapping it up. So I do have one last question for you is, so what conclusions? What conclusion do you draw from this about whether or not there is an afterlife and whether like and how that's sort of driven how you've chosen to sort of live your life in general? Because I mean, I'd say, hey, we should go and run some experiments on this, but it seems like sending you back to Arizona would be actually pretty dangerous.
Last time I went back there, um, things seemed fine or whatever.
Oh, that's good.
No, like I'm out here because I came out here because I felt like I needed to come out here. It just seemed like, I don't
Mhm.
know, something was pushing me to be out here. And like I don't actually have any feeling to go back to Arizona. I actually feel like I need to go east,
Oh,
which is really weird. Like I don't know, like I've been getting this like thought that there's something in the east of where I'm at that I need to see.
well, some of your experience did seem to involve Hindu religions. Would you consider maybe visiting India?
Yeah, I've been considering that for a really long time. Like
Mhm.
I've always wanted to go check out India for sure. I thought that like that whole entire ideology was very interesting, and I mean it's super old too, so I'd want to explore it a lot more. And I mean I've read even about like how Jesus apparently, allegedly, in some people's eyes, actually did spend a lot of time in India during this
Mhm.
area in time that is not written about
Right.
him,
Right.
which makes a whole lot of sense when you kind of like look at some of the things that the dude would have said at face value. You see a lot more Hindu or Zoroastrian than they would have been uh, Hindu.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it'd be definitely interesting if you do end up going. Definitely get back to us and let us know how it went and what you experienced because it sounds like there's a potential different experience than most people would have going to India if you happen to go there in particular.
Well, there's a few places that I want to go, but ultimately, I feel like I go places and then weird shit happens. So it's like, I feel like
Mhm.
I'm the catalyst for strange events. Like my friends never have any strange events, but then they go somewhere with me and some weirdness happens. And it's usually never bad. It's just always a situation that, like is outrageous. It's really
Mhm.
the only way you can describe it. It's like this is an outrageous situation. It's like the Coachella thing. Like we had one guy that was super not religious at all. His name
Yeah.
was Skinny, and I mean he was like totally against religion, just like very, very in his own head about everything. And like we respected him for it because he was always coming at us with super logical shit. But even like that shit shook him to his core, right?
Right.
Because of what Jesus said to him, something that
Right.
he nobody would have ever known about. And I mean, it like changed him in a lot of ways. It's not like he became religious. He just was like, maybe he's like,
Maybe I'm being too harsh.
afterlife. He's like, maybe I'm being too harsh because he was like, that's weird. I can't explain it. But like, this guy knew things that I should have never known. So, in my experience, is that I feel like there's probably an afterlife, but I think it's what the individual makes it. In my experiences, it seems like the more that I've learned about things, it's manipulated or changed
Mhm.
that death experience for me in
Right.
the slightest. But like, it ultimately it changed my perspective on like Catholicism as a whole, because once I started like having these experiences and people couldn't answer my questions, obviously I wanted to search to find other religions and things that could explain this to me. And honestly, it seems a lot more like this whole dharma situation that you would find in Eastern type religions in a lot of ways. And even more so, it's almost like, if that is the case, it does lend a lot of credence to what consciousness's purpose is in this whole thing, because everybody has it, everybody uses it, nobody knows where it came from, but nobody
Mhm.
ever applies that specific thing to death. And like, where does that go when you
Oh,
die?
interesting.
Is
Yeah.
that part of your soul? And then if your conscience does live on, do you take your conscience into the afterlife? And then, for me, it's like, I think that that's like a personal choice. Like, if you believe that you're just going to go and be nothing and be reborn, that's probably what's going to end up happening to you. If you believe that you're still going to be this thing, but you're going into or ascending to a higher plane and you're going to exist in that plane with that rules, like maybe you can stay that way. I think, though, that it's up to you. In my experience, like I feel like going into
Death
that
is what
place,
you make of it.
maybe not what you make. I think you are going somewhere, but at the end of the day, it's where your decision is. And I can still not explain who those people were. They could
Right.
be residual self images from the future that I haven't experienced yet. It could
Right.
just be me because we're all gods. Like there's a thousand different ways of looking at it. But for me, it's just like, like, I don't know. I've died a few times. I've seen some shit. So I'm pretty sure that there's probably some kind of afterlife. I definitely know that the place that we're at here right now is not it.
There's some
And it
kind of
is not the
experience
end.
to have there at the very least.
Yeah, there's some experience to have there, Like it's not going to be nothing. I
Hmm.
mean, if you want it to be nothing, you'll probably be sitting in nothing for a really long time until you decide that
You're
you want
bored
something
now.
else. You're like, yeah, I've been
Bored
here
now.
for a couple. I don't even
Millennia.
know how long I've been
Yeah.
here.
What year is it?
Does anybody have a clock? And then a big clock pops up in front of you, and you're like, oh, thanks, whoever the fuck that was. Was that
And it
me?
was you. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I think it's very interesting. You've had a interesting life and had some very interesting experiences. And I hope you have more better ones. And I hope your travels end up good for you. Thank you so much for coming to Pango. Tell people
Thank
chill,
you. Thank you for
chill,
having me, Chets.
chill.
Chill. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Kang_pirate or on YouTube at Merlin Defango. You can usually just search for Defango. You'll find me everywhere. I talk about mostly current events and make fun of people. I also have been on the internet for a long time, so I also just put out videos talking trash about grifters and losers that trying to be coming back on the internet, make money again after X amount of years.
Oh, I
That's what
do
I do.
believe we have to have a conversation about somebody that may or may not be like that sometime in the near future.
You talking about Steve?
No.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Before you go,
Yeah.
I gotta ask you a question. So,
Yes,
like,
go
I never
please.
really asked about what happened, but I mean,
Yes.
what happened? You and Steve, you guys aren't friends anymore or something?
Yeah, that would be a way to put it. Basically, he just decided to renege on our agreement, decided to force me out of the situation, and then has been driving the channel into the ground ever since.
That's that sucks because like last time I checked, he was like about to be winning that case, and then I was like, you guys are gonna start doing your thing, and then I heard that he said he was gonna sue somebody but didn't,
Yep, yep,
and then
yep.
kept all the money, and then
Yeah.
out of nowhere he just started hating on me, which I didn't even understand because like I didn't talk about him. Shit, I was like still paying him $5 a month as a member on his channel.
And then he started talking.
And then he was
Okay.
talking shit about me, and I'm just kind of like, uh, I did not realize that, like it was gonna go down like that. So I haven't really like talked any smack or anything like that.
Mm,
I've
hmm.
just been kind of trolling him lightly because I'm just like, dude, you really like you had this whole entire arc where you were supposed to be the guy that was getting shit on, and then you
The
turned a fucking
underdog.
round
Yep.
and you literally shit on Chesh and everybody else in the community. I just don't understand it. I just, like I have morals, right?
Yeah.
And when I see shit like that happen, I just see a person without any morality. And I mean, why do people exist like that? I don't know. It's like
It's
you take
really
away some
sad.
kind of higher
Yeah.
power, and then they just do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Well, we can
But
talk some details in the background if you're interested. But for now, we are at the hour-and-a-half mark, and we should let the lovely people go to the bathroom and get their drinks and get their food and enjoy their evenings. Thank you so much for coming.
mhm.
I will make sure that your links end up in the description down below for whichever ones are not there. And we will catch you guys next time, and I hope you are able to join us again sometime soon. Thank you so much, Defango. Have a good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Goodbye.
I'm ready.